Dead Rising. Dead Rising is definitely one of those games that I fondly think of when someone asks me, Josh, what generation of games influenced you the most in regards to consoles? I can run off, honestly, a list of names from different franchises that to me influenced games in that particular time frame, but to me, Dead Rising was in dead centre of that circle. No pun intended. Dead Rising is a third-person sandbox zombie survival game. Yeah, try and say that 10 times fast. Where you play as Frank, a photojournalist set on a path to find out the mysterious goings-on in a small town called Willamette, Colorado. And as we go through the introduction sequence, we quickly find out that the town has been overrun with the undead, and upon landing on the roof of the local mall, where 95% of the game is based, we quickly start investigating what has happened, and with using our camera we do take evidence of the disaster, and as the story progresses and the stories unfold, we quickly surmise that this has actually been a terrorist attack. The gameplay itself, just from the box art, depicts a showcase of weapons that can be used in the mall itself. Everyday items such as hammers, saws, boxes, clothes hangers, mannequins. Yeah, maybe not everyday items. Using these weapons against the undead in a variety of different ways is your way to progress in the game, not just in getting from like A to B and wading through zombies, but also to progress Frank further, as the game does actually have a leveling up system, but this is not like a standard RPG in any way. The system is very linear and unlocks predetermined skills and stat upgrades that can go into health, storage space, speed, etc. And the bonus of using these skills is using them against the zombies, and you can't fault doing a DDT on a zombie in the middle of the busiest mall in America. It just hits right. When it comes to this game, putting it simply, I love this game for a myriad of reasons, but my first thought is that this game was something that really got my attention playing some of the old Xbox original game demos that would come with magazines. And one of these little beauties had a trailer for the Xbox 360 game Dead Rising, which I'm actually going to show very shortly. And this particular trailer showcased the main game and its main aims.
Day one. The day I came here was the worst day of my life. I'll admit it, it was a big mistake. I'm a wartime photojournalist. I've seen it all. Horror, famine, death. The real stuff of nightmares. At least, that's what I thought. That was until I saw a corpse get up, walk, and kill. You probably think I'm nuts. The dead getting up and walking? Zombies. I'm not nuts though. Right now, if things go well, I may get my hands on a Pulitzer or something. It's not like you hear about too many zombie stories in the news these days. So I guess there are only two things left to do. Film everything I can, and survive until help arrives.
And to be honest, from that point forward, I was hooked. I used to look up information for when this game actually came out, getting opinions from folk who had actually played the game, as at that point of the game releasing, and actually for a while after, I still did not have an Xbox 360 to play, and I was still throwing my weight around on the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox, for which I still have. I remember still talking to folk in class at school about this game, trying to get a hint of the experience of playing the game, and was genuinely blown away when I got my first Xbox 360 on Christmas Day in 2007. And I could honestly have not asked for a better present, as this to me was my opening. My intro of sorts into a world of many different worlds and different stories that would accompany them. At the same time as this happening, I also fell in love with the Assassin's Creed series via Assassin's Creed 1, but that is honestly a whole different video. I remember heading to my local game shop, and at the time they did not have it in, so I actually went to Game Station, which was only up the road, and I decided to get myself a copy of Dead Rising. I was so looking forward to it on the bus ride back. I was even reading the manual that would actually come with the game itself, and already feeling giddy to put the game in, sit back, and indulge in some zombie killing mayhem. Now, with the way this video is actually going, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, Josh, but there's always going to be a but here, isn't there? And then we'll all go down a rabbit hole of how awkward the game was and how it can be to new starters who haven't a bloody clue what they're doing. Well, no, not really. I would honestly admit that yes, the game's still being fresh to me back in 2007. It gave me a sort of rude awakening, as by this point I had already dealt with games that had already had an autosave feature, and it was quite rare for me to come across games that needed manual saves, aside from Grand Theft Auto games. And this cost me quite a few hours of time in needless deaths and respawns, but this is in no way a bad thing. I'd like to think that this was actually part of the survival aspect of the game, and it actually added a challenge in its very own way. Now, a lot of what you see on screen may come across as fairly simple, but in its essence, it's packed with different details that give this game its own uniqueness. One of those details is that the game that you actually play in is limited in how much time you have to play the storyline, and part of the gameplay infrastructure is enforced by a 72-hour in-game timer that ticks down as you play the game. Now, when playing this game or mode, you have 72 in-game hours to complete the storyline, rescue survivors, and uncover the truth. Another feature that was honestly nuts at this point in time was how many zombies you could have rendered on stream at any one time. And by today's standards, this is normal. But back in 06? Nah, this was mental and just came to show how much the 7th generation of consoles performed, especially in highly dense, packed areas. Now, just with this does not mean that you're constantly playing the storyline objectives from A to Z. There are moments where you would need to wait for the next chapter of the story to commence, which leaves a fair bit of wiggle room for killing zombies, going up against bosses, and other experience point paths. And if you actually didn't want to do the story mode, you could just toss it off and just start killing zombies for the next 72 hours till the actual helicopter arrives, and you would actually get a unique ending based on that gameplay as well. One particular aspect to the zombies in this game, which was quite new at the time, to my eyes especially, was that after 7 PM, the zombies have this sort of buff that actually makes them slightly harder to kill, and would mean you actually slogging zombies a little bit longer before they would actually go down. So this does add a challenge of almost uncertainty, especially on your first playthrough. One of the main ways to gain health in this sprawling mall is food, and there is a mega ton in this game, including blenders which can enhance food further, which does add special properties that can help within the game, especially against bosses, i.e. the speed boost beverage named Quickstep. The food and health system in Dead Rising can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. You pick up food and Frank eats it to gain health lost. But when certain items are combined together via the very few blenders found throughout the actual mall, they can have interesting properties, not just Quickstep, but there are certain ones that can help or hinder you in the actual game, and you'll find that in most boss fight strategies, food is king. Fitting in with the game's main character, you can use Frank's camera to gain PP points from each picture. There are quite a few genres that would actually come with their own scores, starting with the more common ones, which would be horror and brutality. But then ones like Outtake and Erotica are actually a lot more rarer in certain situations, like you have to almost get like a decent angle on these. But there are also times where a specific action will actually occur, which will spawn a PP camera sort of sticker above the subject's heads. And if you actually take a snap at that correct moment, this can actually bank you some really high level PP point bonuses, so they are worth keeping an eye out. Magazines are items that you'll actually find in the mall, but in various different areas aside from bookstores, and each come with their own little buffs to certain elements of the game itself, ranging from weapons damage and usage, buffs to food and how much health you gain from it, and even mini buffs to survivors, and even better buffs to your camera and how many PP points you'll actually get from each photo that is taken. It is honestly mental how many you'll come across in the game, and another bonus is that they can actually be combined and stacked to add even more benefits. Clothing is one aspect of the game that makes this game a hell of a lot more comedic, as you can dress frank in whatever is available to you, and the variety of costumes is just bonkers insane. And one great aspect is that these costumes will be on Frank during the cutscenes, which just makes things a hell of a lot more funny. One of the most interesting aspects to the Dead Rising series are the psychopath battles, or bosses if you prefer to call them that, and some of these in terms of character range can start from the most timid of people to the downright macabre of the human race. But within Dead Rising 1, you can really see the early remnants, or the spark, I should say, that kicked off this trend in the series, with characters like Cletus the gun store owner, who was my first boss in the game when I first played, Clint the broken war veteran, Adam the sadistic clown, and Kent the artistic yet sadistic photographer. And how you actually beat them is not told to you straight away, and you would normally have to find ways out yourself. But within the first in the series, this is not necessarily told to you, as the game somewhat prompts you to pot shot the first boss, i.e. Carlito, into submission, or to gain enough PP levels to beat him eventually. And it's only through experimentation, or by the help of YouTube tutorials, that you'll actually find a really good way of beating him quickly. The many various different weapons that you'll actually find through them all do have different durabilities that can help gauge how many hits a weapon has before it's practically unusable. And normally when it comes to most items, they may not be the most practical things to use as weapons, but they can be used in different ways, and this was what was the main draw of the game. And it was the concept that weapons in a mall, no matter what, could be used, but after you finish the game, especially on like the second/third playthrough, you do realise that it's very limited in certain aspects, especially when it comes to using a teddy bear as a weapon. And one of the reasons why I think everything could not be used is actually because the game would be a lot more bigger as a memory hog, as it would need to render all these items usable, and the game already was taking a hog with how many zombies were on screen at any given time, which even by today's standards is all about a fraction. Something interesting about the weapons is the fact that the guns in this game are dog water. In a game where zombies are persistently scattered all over the mall like an aftermath of a tornado, you'd think that guns are the best thing to use, because this game is set in America and you are playing as an American, but no. The shooting mechanics are something ripped out of Resident Evil 4, mixed up like a Tetris cube, and then slobbered back in like a child-shaped puzzle box. So what's the next thing? Improvised violence. It is absolutely mental how much of the items in this game you can use as weapons, and this is one game to keep an eye out for just from the variety of weapons alone. And even back in previous versions of the actual game, like the beta versions, you can see this within footage from Steepo's channel. You can actually see that they did have different ideas in mind that wouldn't have even been realised until later sequels. Now, one of the many faults that this game has is its save system, which is almost like a double-edged sword. There are no autosaves in this game, which at the time autosaves were quite frequent in other games, and with this it adds its own challenge, as there are a finite amount of areas to save, but you'll more likely find a save point in each part of the mall in the form of the safe room couch or the many bathrooms in the mall itself. And if you happen to die, the game will give you a few choices on what to do, but you'll never be able to reload back into a boss fight, but you will be able to reload your last save. If you're anything like me, I would have saved probably half an hour before the boss battle, then died, which means all your progress in terms of PP and weapons gained will poof, gone. And one of the other options is to start the game again with your current PP level, and this legit takes you back to the very beginning of the game, introduction cutscenes as well, but with your current level, so it's technically like a new game plus, if you want to call it that. Now, when going around the mall itself, you will always be getting calls from a transceiver or walkie-talkie where Otis, one of the main survivors on the actual team, will give you updates regarding story events, or if he has actually seen other survivors that you can save. These can be a massive help, and if you answer all of his calls, you'll actually get an achievement for it. But one of the most awkward things about this is that you cannot bloody skip them in case of a zombie attack, or if you're being attacked whilst on the walkie-talkie, or anything like that. You'll actually get an angry call from Otis berating you for putting the phone down abruptly because the game wouldn't allow you to use the walkie-talkie and attack zombies at the same time. Oh, sorry dude, I didn't think your phone call was more important than my jugular being ripped out by Barry, who used to live down the road with his wife and 3 kids, whom he murdered, by the way, the day before, because, oh yeah, he's a zombie. Sorry, this happened a lot during my runs. So, survivors. Well, a lot can be said about the survivors in this game. Well, if I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not going to stand on pretense. The AI is absolute dog shit. I'm not kidding. Trying to get from A to B with some of these survivors is beyond a joke. They'll get stuck, not really defend themselves, even when armed with a bloody boomstick, and some just downright won't move unless you carry them all the way back to the safe room. So yeah, this can be a pain, especially if you want to find yourself almost trying to figure out who to save a lot of the time. But no, it's honestly a mistake, as you'll need to take all that you come across back to the safe room, so every single survivor you find, you've got to bring them back. Because if you actually leave them in another area, because each area's got a loading screen, their health begins to plummet when you're in another area of the mall and they are not with you. So the survivor's AI was a bit of a point of ridicule, especially for this game and almost for its sequel. When walking around the mall itself, you'll actually come across doors that will take you down to the maintenance tunnels, and quite honestly, it is mental down there as it's packed wall to wall with zombies, and there are not many vehicles to actually choose from, and the ones that you do can get damaged so easily that even one of these breaks down when you're in the middle of it all, you are quite simply f***ed. One of the clear indicators of this game's cheesiness, especially early on, is actually from the characters and its storyline, as there are countless one-liners that Frank will actually come out with, and that just sort of tones the somewhat seriousness of the situation down, and certain sections where the game tries to use a sort of analogy for the ever-increasing demand in meat production in relation to the zombies themselves, which it is a bit of a nice touch, but I feel that it's somewhat lost, especially in a game that can be as humorous as this. This next particular segment is one that I don't think was a bad thing, but it was also a good thing, I think, for this game. The achievements in this game are manageable, with a sprinkle of difficulty between each one, and some are just too easy to not do, but there is one achievement that honestly sets the bar for the worst achievement probably in existence, and that is the 7-Day Survivor achievement. This achievement is one of the worst to have ever graced the 7th generation of consoles, and you'll notice that with other YouTubers out there, they'll agree that this was just a bad achievement to get overall. In the Infinity Game mode, which you'll unlock after playing through the 72-hour mode and overtime mode, you need to survive 7 days inside the mall, which actually means you need to play the game mode in one run for 14 real-time hours. I know this isn't happening again anytime soon, that I much know of, but you need to survive against the zombie horde and other characters who will verse off against you, and once these people are actually dealt with, you'll actually be granted a care package of all sorts of food and weapons, which is actually quite a nice little addition. With surviving this, you'll probably think, nah, I'll be fine, just need to stand around and do nothing because my health won't deplete, will it? Well, you'd be dead wrong, because your health meter is on a constant drain. Every 120 seconds a life bar will actually drop, and once enough of them drop, it's game over. So you'll need to constantly conserve the food that you pick up, and health as well, and also have a plan in mind on where you're going to go and who you're going to verse off against. So it's an absolute mind boggle, and the achievement itself is no mean feat. But all that aside, all the bad stuff aside, this game has quite honestly one of the most interesting followings that I have ever seen in recent memory, and the main inspiration behind this video was actually the content creator Steepo and his content. So special thank you to you, mate, for helping me realise my love for this game once again, and I cannot wait for the remake, honestly. With the game currently undergoing a remaster at this moment in time that's actually going to be releasing quite soon, I honestly cannot wait for the game to release, and by looking at the gameplay bits and pieces that I've seen so far, I can honestly say that it looks almost exact to the original, aside from the overall change in look on Frank and several other characters. The changes to the look of the mall and the UI elements as well is something that I'm looking forward to seeing in action. I will at a later time look into some of the comparisons between the original and the remaster, and maybe at a later point I might do Dead Rising 2. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe as well if you would like to. You'll probably notice that I've done this video a little bit more differently than what I normally would do, and this is something that is very new to me, and I'm starting to experiment a lot more with videos, including the audio and things like that, so please feel free to give me some feedback below what you'd like to see more of, or anything that I can actually improve upon. And yeah, with that, guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.